A very good morning to everyone who's available on this platform. I welcome you all to the lovely day 4 of the MTP on writing quality research paper and publishing in high impact journals, tips and techniques. It is a privilege to have another eminent resource person, Dr. Confidentiality S. Rao. I welcome you, sir, on this platform, along with all the participants who have joined us. Welcome, sir.
Thank you, Ms.
Today's session will focus on how to write findings and discussion, how to write conclusion, how to write managerial implication, then talking about limitation and scope of future research. These are the topics that will be covered in today's session. A bio brief of our resource person. Dr. Confidentiality Rao is PhD from HMB Garhwal Central University, Srinagar. He has research, he is research guide associated with 5 universities and 3 PhD have been awarded under his guidance. He has more than 70 papers published in reputed national and international journals. He has authored 4 books and is member of editorial board for many reputed journals. And along with this, he has so many accolades to his credit. So I wish a very great learning experience for everyone. And I hand over the session to you, sir. Please, sir.
Thank you, madam. Thank you very much for your kind words towards me. I'm really privileged to be associated with all of you. It's a great honor for me to be associated with you. And it's really, am I audible, please?
Yes, sir, you audible.
And it's a privilege for me to be associated with you. This Kumar, Goel Institute of Technology, Department of Management Studies, and organizing a wonderful webinar on the writing quality research paper and publishing in high quality, high impact journals, tips and techniques. This is really a wonderful topic nowadays. It's a need of the hour to be discussed because many of our scholars or even the assistant professors, associate professors also nowadays in dilemma in which journals were supposed to publish the paper, research papers. And because you're all aware, there are so many, the journals nowadays are placing in the UGC care list, and within no time they are removing it also. There are so many problems in this situation. This topic is very much relevant to be discussed on this platform. And I really thank the organizers for giving me this opportunity. Convener of the FDP, Dr. Vibhutiji, Professor and Head. Co-convener, Dr. Ashish Kumar Singh Ji, Associate Professor. And coordinators, Richa Shuklaji, Assistant Professor of the Department Management. Mr. Sardar Tyagi, also Assistant Professor. And my special thanks to my good friend, Professor Saurabh and Sunil Atulkarji, another resource person, and also Madam Dr. Megha Agarwalji, another resource person, and the first day inaugural guest of honor, Dr. Mangesh Prasad Kasbekarji, Professor and Program Head, NL Dalmia Institute of Management Studies, Research, Mumbai. Very good eminent professors and excellent participants for the last 2 days, since 27th onwards. I'm not viewing all the entire program. in the previous days. I did not view the entire program, but to some extent I have viewed. The program was conducting real excellent, and the speakers also very eminent speakers that you have selected. I really congratulate the organizers for choosing this type of, the best, excellent and need of the our topic for the researchers. For that, I really congratulate the organizers. You are organizing in a very excellent manner. And I'm very much thankful to the Rajkumar Goel Institute of Technology, Department of Management Studies, and the all other organizers. If I didn't call anybody by mistake, to pardon me, everybody is excellently organizing. All the organizers are coordinating the things and organizing very nicely for the last few days. I have been witnessing it. Now, this coming to this topic, the writing quality research paper and publishing in high impact journals, tips and techniques. Just within 1 or 2 seconds, 2 minutes, I will share the screen. Before that, as I mentioned, writing quality research paper and publishing in high impact journal nowadays finding very difficult, because for PhD scholars also, they need to mandate. It's a mandatory for them to publish 2 papers before the submission of the thesis. And in that situation, there are many predatory journals are there, and they're all the motivating the scholars, researchers to publish in their respective journals. But we need to understand the journal before you are going to publish any journal, any article in any journal. We have to see the credibility of the journal, because predatory journals without having the peer review and all that also, they are simply publishing. If you send today, and within no time, within 1 day, they are publishing it without peer review and all that. And the impact factor, they don't have the impact factor also. Such type of journals are there. And even UGC care list also, some of the journals, whatever journals today, they are placed. And sometimes after 1 or 2 months, nowadays, the situations are, they're removing such type of journals. So that is why we're all in confusion. How many, what are the journals that we have as on today in the care list, and what are the journals are removed? Identifying these things are very, very difficult. Nowadays, it has become very difficult. So now, without taking much of time, the need of the hour, the topic that you have chosen by the organizers, this great institution, Rajkumar Goel Institute of Technology, Department of Management Studies, chosen an excellent topic, and it's relevant for the day. And let us start without wasting the time. Let us start the assignment that has given to me. I will just please bear with me for a few seconds. I will share the screen. One second. One second, please.
Yes, sir, we are waiting.
One second, please be online. One second.
Yes,
It
sir.
is when I am sharing the share screen when I touch it. What happens here? The screen share, our own screen is sharing. And 1 second. And also post attendance Zoom. These are all appearing. 1 second. Now I'm trying it. One second, please. Please be on the line.
Yes, sir.
Madam, you please stop your screen sharing so that I can share.
Okay, sir. Okay, sir.
You please stop it.
Yatika? Sir, just give me a moment. I'll do it.
Yeah, sure, please.
Okay, ma'am, I'm doing.
Okay, fine, Yatika. Yes, sir, we have done it.
Yeah. 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 Is it visible?
Yes, sir, it is visible.
1 second. Am I audible, madam?
Yes, sir, you are audible.
Okay. Is the screen visible to all of you?
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you very much. Now, as I told you, this is my introduction. Of course, you have already introduced me. Now, let us go to the presentation part. Now, the presentation are divided into 5 parts, as I was interested to speak on these 5 topics: how to write findings and discussion, how to write conclusion, how to write managerial implications, talking about limitations, and the last, scope for the future research. These are the things that I would like to talk to you all. Now, coming to the first slide, meaning of research writing components. See, research writing is, as I mentioned, it is very important right from the abstract to conclusion and further research. Whatever components are there in between, all these components are very, very important. You may be conducted as a researcher, you may conduct the study or an empirical study in an excellent manner. But the thing is, at the end of the day, you need to explain about it, how you have conducted. You need to disseminate it, and you need to present it to the government and to the general public and whoever is their stakeholders. It is the responsibility of the researchers to express his views and his findings on the problem, whatever problem the researcher has taken up for conducting an empirical study. There are different, numerous problems will be there in the society, as far as, especially in the social sciences. The problem today that we talk will not be the problem for tomorrow. It is quite natural. And tomorrow's problem may not be the problem for the day after tomorrow. The nature of the problem will go on change, because the problems, when problems are there, the problems will be, once the suggestion, the solution is given, then the problem will be completed. And another type of, the problems will be generated in the society when we are living in a society. So again, we need to go into the problem, and accordingly we have to find out the solution by conducting a study, empirical study, by taking the opinions of different people, and we have to give appropriate suggestions or recommendations to come out of the problem. These are the basic things. So the point is, here you have conducted an excellent study, there's no doubt about it. But at the end of the day, you have to present it, you have to report it, you have to write the study, empirical study, writing of empirical study and reporting. It's nothing but report writing. Writing of research components or report writing, both are same. So report writing of various components in an empirical study is very, very important. That's what I told you. You may conduct an excellent study, but you have taken excellent variables and you have analyzed it, and you have interpreted. But the thing is, the interpretation, analyzation, and the way that you have the presentation in the report is very, very important. Unless you give an appropriate report or writing of the concerned components in the empirical study, then it becomes useless. So that is why writing part is very, very important. So researchers, it is two sides. One side is two sides of the coin. One side is conducting of research, another side is writing of the components which are involved in the research. These are all very important, because writing, why I'm telling you the importance of writing, unless you write it properly, appropriately or properly, the people cannot understand. Though your study is very good and very useful, it may be very useful to the people, to the society, and even to the government for implementing different schemes, to different welfare schemes to the people in the country, in the society, in the regions. So that is why it's on the basis of studies only all the decision making will be done. So that is why writing part is very, very important. So that is why components in research writing report, it's nothing but a statement of the result of an investigation. So you are conducting a study, you are investigating by taking a particular problem and you are investigating. When you are investigating, what for you are investigating? To find out a solution, appropriate solution to come out of the problem that was identified. So this is very, very important information. So statement of the result, investigation is nothing but statement of result of an investigation. So that statement of the result of the investigation should be written legibly, simple and easy language. Everybody should understand, even a common man should understand once he go through your study. And the government should be in a position to implement the recommendations that you have proposed. that you're going to propose. These are all things that happens. So that is the reason statement of the result of the investigation. We can say like that. Interpret your findings. Your findings are to be interpreted. As I mentioned just now, briefly, it's not that the people will take huge pages of the report and all that. It's not the number of pages that you have written or number of pages that you have interpreted. Pages will not be counted, but the only thing is the content matters. So content is very important. How you have presented the solution or the findings of your investigation, how you are interpreted, that has to be focused largely. So large in the sense appropriate and concisely it has to be focused when writing part is taking into consideration. So that is one area. Why your findings are very important. Another important, we are talking about meaning research and research writing components. And after this, we'll slowly go into the details of the 5 topics that I was interested, that I will speak. But before that, a simple narration I'm presenting or submitting before you. So the point is your findings are important, very important. Why your findings are important? Because you are giving a solution to the problem that is identified by you as a researcher, and you are going for an empirical study, prepared a questionnaire, and you have gone through so much of literature that is available earlier on that particular problem. You have gone through it, and you have identified different types of the gaps that in previous studies, and from the gaps that you have taken, you have designed the objectives, hypothesis, and all that, and methodology that you have formulated, and finally you are giving findings of it after analyzing it by using appropriate tools, statistical tools, and all that. So the point is here, these are all things will be done by everybody. Every researcher has to do it. So what is new thing is what I would like to submit before you is that the findings are how you are writing the findings. The findings should be understandable. That is what is important. You have given so much of the graphs and the tables that are given, and the tables, whatever the components, whatever variables that you have presented in the table, that has to be present in an understandable manner, so that the people can. That's what I'm telling you. A layman should understand. Layman, this is the person who doesn't know about the research and all that. He also, when he just go through it, he should understand excellently. So in such a manner, the findings are to be written, and link your findings with the prior research. This is very important. The prior research means the prior, whatever problem that you have taken up for conducting an empirical study on the same problem, some other researchers also earlier, definitely they would have conducted. So you need to take, because the same problem that you are taking, of course, the colors may be changed today. The colors will not be consistent because, as I mentioned, social sciences are always change. Issues are always go on change. So that is why. So you need to link the earlier findings or prior studies, the findings, and you need to compare. You have to take them into consideration, and you have to what is your study, and what findings that you have, how you have come up with the findings of your study. These are all to be, and what is the gap, what is the difference between the earlier studies and your study, what is new in your study that you found. Your findings were telling that, all these things you are supposed to link up with the prior research. Then only it will be rich, it will become enriched. Otherwise, it is of no bearing and all that. Because comparison is very important in social sciences. Prior research, taking into consideration the prior research, is also very important for the how you have given the solution for different problems and all that. For that, The problem may be same, but the way of the existing today and some years back, the problem may be same, but today the problem, the people they are facing problem may be different, and the people earlier, their situations, environment, and their environmental situations and their own individual situations may be different. Problem may be the same, but situations will be different. You take into consideration that the findings, how it is, your findings are important, and how your findings are different to the previous findings, previous researchers' findings, that has to be focused, very important. And next, you have exploration of your new research questions. So research questions, when you talk about research questions, always should be designed. If you go through volume of literature, then only on a particular, once you identify a particular problem, you have to go through, volume of literature that is, which is available on that particular area, on that particular aspect. So once you go through the literature, abundant literature is available nowadays on one particular problem, if you take. So that literature, as much literature as you can, if you go through it, then what happens, you can have better idea about the problem. And once you have the better idea, it will be easy for you to conduct, it will be easy for you to study the problem in different angles, and you can conduct the study accordingly, and it will be very effective. The quality study can be expected. So that is the reason the review of literature has to be, the researcher has to go through abundantly the review of literature and all that. So that review of literature, what I mean to say is that review of literature will give a lot of, the inputs to the researcher, and the gaps also, as I mentioned a few seconds back, the gaps of the research also can be identified once the researcher goes through into the review of literature which is available. Then it is possible for him the gaps identification and all that. So these gaps identification, what does it mean? The gap is nothing but what the previous researchers told, and what are the areas that they left over without touching the areas by the previous research, because it is very difficult. All the researchers cannot take up all the issues. Some angles, some components, they will leave it, because it is difficult for them to take all the information, all the problem related areas to be investigation for them. It becomes very difficult. So that is why some areas will be left over. They cannot, because of the time constraints and the resources constraints, maybe one of the reasons. So that is why they may forget some of the areas. So what areas they have left over in their research, those are all, once you go through it, you can identify them. So those are what we call gaps. So the gaps are to be identified by the researcher. Once he go through the abundant volume of literature, he can identify the gaps, and those gaps, from those gaps, you can generate the research questions. Research questions can be generated through gaps only. So once the first and foremost is very important is literature review, identification. Go through the researcher has to go through the review of literature, and for identification of gaps. Once the gaps are identified, the gaps are to be written, and the gaps, out of the gaps only the questions can be generated. So research questions will be generated. Once the research questions are generated on the basis of research questions, then the objectives will be framed, and the hypothesis also will be framed one by one, step by step. All the research methodology also can be taken on the basis of the objectives that are formulated and all that. So these are all things one by one are interlinked. So that is why new research questions, when you are exploration of your new research questions, are very important. How you have to write the new research questions means on the basis of volume of literature. When you go through it, you can identify the gaps, and those gaps you have to put it in a research questions form. So those questions you are supposed to investigate. The point is here, you are supposed to investigate those questions, because the questions later stage you will be formulated into objectives. So you are supposed to accomplish the objectives. The objectives are nothing but capstone, as I mentioned. Those you are supposed to accomplish at the end of the day. So that is very important. So writing of new research questions are very, very important. That has to be written specifically, briefly, and understandably. That you have to write. That is very important. New ideas or perspective. So as I mentioned, when you go through abundant review of a volume of literature, when you go through which is concerned to your area or the research, then definitely you will get new ideas in your mind. Without, if you don't go through the literature review which is available, then what happens? You have certain idea in your mind with regard to that particular problem, and that only will be there in your mind. So your broader perspective will be generated when you go through the literature review. So new ideas will be generated. So new perspective will be generated. So these all will be generated when you go through the problem related, whatever problem that you have taken, the problem related literature. When you go through, you can easily identify the automatically what happens, the new ideas, new perspective on the problem can easily be will be generated in our mind as a researcher. Next, important new evidence for existing theories, new evidences also we can, whatever important evidences existing theories, that also can be written appropriate, but concisely, briefly. You are supposed to, the researcher should be supposed to write briefly. The review of literature is important, but at the same time, you are not supposed, whatever review of literature that you have taken up in different studies related to your problem, it should be written briefly. It should not be more lengthy and all that. Okay, pages are, that's what I told you in the beginning. Pages are not the criteria, and the only thing is the matter is important. The content is important. So that content, whether it is related to your topic or not, such review of literature only you are supposed to take it, and you have to interpret. You have to write it in a concise manner. Next, you have a research writing report include. You're all, as I mentioned just a few seconds back, any research writing or report writing includes, these are all the stages: abstract, introduction, review of literature, formulation of objectives, construction of hypothesis, designing methodology, determine the sample size, various tools for data analysis, right? And then the facts, interpretation of findings, and the facts discussion with evidences, offering suggestions or solutions for the problem, for better improvement, for betterment of the society, or for for the improvement of the situations, arriving conclusion. These are all the important component. Finally, you have references, bibliography, and appendix, and all these things will be there. Questionnaire will be there that you need to incorporate, and you have to submit. This is the structure of all of involved in a study, in an empirical study, or for even for PhD thesis also. These are all components which are very, very important. So that is why. So this we are talking today about this some of the components only, because the time will not be sufficient. Whatever components that I was asked to speak, I will concentrate on it. So these are all the basic, the structure of the research writing, or you can call it as a report writing. Okay, next you have the significance of research writing, findings discussion. Now the findings discussion conclusion part is very important, as I mentioned. And what is the significance? First of all, why should we write these components effectively? What is the importance? What is the significance of writing these finding, discussion, and conclusion? So when you go into this, research writing is a major component of the research. It is all very common, because it is research, as I mentioned in the previous few minutes back. You may conduct a good research investigation. Your investigation is excellent, no doubt about it. But writing is very important. How you are interpreting, how you are conveying your investigation, that is very, very important. The convey the how, in what way you are conveying, what are the language that you are using, how you are interpreting your investigation, or your findings. That is most important. And so keeping in view, because it has got a lot of importance, no? That is why keeping with that point in view for your study, you need to take certain things into mind, and accordingly, if I say, for example, concise, brief statements should be there, and the pages should not be more number of pages not required. You should be stick to the point of the investigation. These are all the things that you have to keep in mind as a researcher for good writing, or for good report writing, especially findings, discussions, and conclusion, because these are all very, very important components of a research, empirical research. A report should authentic by the authority. So this is another important point, that once you prepare the report and report writing, everything is completed. And for example, if it is a PhD thesis, or if it is a article, when you prepare and send for the publication, or submitted a thesis for a particular university, and the authority or report to the UGC, University Grants Commission, also some projects nowadays, the researchers are submitting the projects now, not nowadays, since so many long years way back. I also have submitted 2 research projects, minor research and major research projects, to the University Grants Commission, New Delhi. So reports, when you submit to the ICSSR, UGC, or if it is a PhD thesis to the university, when you are submitting, or article publication in a particular journal, whatever it is, a report should be that reporting, the report writing is very important. It should be authenticity. It should be authenticate, and by the authority, means originality must be there, and the authority has to approve. Then only it will be approved. Your writing, your the research work will be identified. Otherwise, it's of no use. So nowadays the publication is very, very difficult. So unless it is proving authenticity, and without plagiarism, if you are ensured, then only it will be published. And not only plagiarism free, but also you have the content, how you have prepared the content, how you have presented the content in the text, that content, in the text, or in the report, or in the article, or in the report. So these are all matters. So that is why that should be kept in mind by this. So the point what I would like to submit before you, that should be kept in mind, so that while writing these components will take a lot of care, and accordingly will the researcher can present the report, or report writing can be done. Next, you have the report. A report should like the special attention in report writing. That's what language point of view, tools that you have used, and the analysis that you that you do, and the discussion part, what you are going to the findings, the discussion on the basis of findings, that you when you writing on it, the writing in the discussion part. These are all special attention should be taken, because the publication decision will depend on the writing part only, on these areas, especially the findings, analysis, and discussion, conclusions. These are all the very important components. How you are writing these components, that matters for publication and all that. And a lengthy report is not necessary. That already I spoke about it. Lengthy, it's not the pages, how many pages that you have written is not the matter. The only thing that will be taken into consideration is the content, and how you present it is very important. That's many times I told you so far. Research writing should be a brief and compact document. That's what. This is also same point which I covered earlier. So brief, it should be brief. Pages are not the point. And compact document, meaningful. It should be meaningful, at the same time understandable. A common man also, once he go through, the person whoever is not having the research bent up, all, even if you go through it, he should understand the document easily. And what are the solutions that are offered by the researcher, he should understand, because at the end of the day, it should be implemented. The recommendations, suggestions are to be implemented. Without understandable, how people can implement it. It's difficult. And the suggestions recommended that you give as a researcher, it cannot be implemented because of ambiguity, confusion. If you write in it, if you write with all ambiguity and confusion as a researcher, if you have that ambiguity and confusion, and what direction that you give to the authority, to the people who are going to experience it while implementing the suggestions or recommendations. That is the problem. Now, you should give complete picture of the problem. So when you are taking a particular problem, you have to explain about the problem in a broader perspective, and the different angles of the problem, how that problem has arisen, what are the roots of the problem. These are all very important. Background of the problem, these are all very important. Unless you touch upon these things, then the problem cannot be once as a researcher. If you don't understand, you cannot write, you cannot present, you cannot the report the problem appropriately. If you don't understand, it is difficult to elaborate the problem, and it becomes difficult for the to give appropriate suggestions to the concerned authority. So that is why complete the brief and compact document, and it's a complete picture of the problem should be identified, should be presented. At the same time, we are not supposed to forget that it should not be very lengthy. It's not in the in terms of pages and all. That's what I told. It should be understandable, compact, brief. That is very important. Keeping in view, at the same time, brief means vocabulary, difficult vocabulary you are not supposed to use. Difficult vocabulary, if you use it, you can only understand. Others, a common man or below the level of the understand person, the grassroots level, whoever is facing the problem, how they can understand. You have to come down to their level. Ultimately, at the end of the day, research should understand, should be disseminated. Everybody should understand. The problem has to be solved. That's what, as a researcher, we have the responsibility to give. So that the problem solution, when you are giving without understandable, without by using hard vocabulary and all that, it's not correct. So that is why it should be understandable and should be implementable, and the problem should be understood first of all by the investigator, by the researcher, and on the basis of that, the solutions or suggestions, recommendations, whatever he offers, that should be easily understandable, briefly, and simple language must be used in it, so that there will be no problem. Writing the report is a significant part to develop interpretation data. So the report interpretation data is first of all very important. Data collection is very important. So data collection, you need to, before you go for a data collection, you need to prepare a questionnaire, and the questionnaire can be prepared on the basis of, as I mentioned in the few minutes back, the gaps. Once you identify objectives are on the basis of objectives, gaps, and such questions, you need to develop a questionnaire. And once you develop the questionnaire, that questionnaire will not be the final. You have to take that questionnaire and you have to take to the go to the respondents before you administer the questionnaire. You have to take that questionnaire to the respondents, and respondents, you have to ask them those questions. Draft questionnaire you have to prepare, you have to ask those questions, pose the questions before the respondents. And respondents, some of the questions may not be related to them, and they also will say these questions are not related to our problem, sir. These are the questions, these questions are not, this is the question, the question should be like this, like that. They only will give suggestions to us. This is what we call the pilot study that we have to conduct. The pilot study, once you conduct the questionnaire modifications by conducting interaction with the respondents, we can understand the changes or the modifications in the draft questionnaire. We can understand, we can prepare, we can modify it. So once you modify it, and the final draft, final questionnaire will prepare accordingly, and that will be circulated, that will be administered among the respondents or the beneficiaries. Then we get the opinions of it. So the point is, when you get the opinion, the data, that is nothing but the data, and the data is very important. It's very significant or important role it plays in writing the report or to develop the data. Data has to be developed. Once the collection of data is one aspect, and once the data is collected, you have to develop it, you have to analyze it by using appropriate statistical tools and all that. Analyzation, through analyzation, some graphs, tables will be generated, qualitative study, quantitative study. There are two things are there. And if it is an empirical study, so many tables and graphs can be generated, and that can be interpretation. On the basis of that, you have to interpret the data and all that, the tables and all that you have to interpret. And that interpretation is very important. It should be understandable that finally anything is you write, but anything you write in the sense, whatever you have mentioned in the analysis, that should be right, that should be put, that should present in the form of text, that should be understood. So in that way, interpretation of the data is important. Next, you have certain guidelines for research writing. You should not forget certain guidelines of the research report writing or research writing. What guidance generally you have to take into consideration means objectivity is very important, impartial and or fair. It should not be partial, or deviation should not be there. So for example, you are conducting an investigation on a particular problem. So then you are reaching to the beneficiaries. So when you reach the beneficiaries and asking the information from them, if somebody says fact, that fact you are not supposed to deviate it. That fact, so you are not supposed to change it. You have to take it, whether it is related to your investor, whether it is interested to you or not interested. It's not your interest. It is the fact. The facts are to be taken, whether it is negative or positive impact. So whatever it is, the opinions are, whether it is a negative opinion or positive opinion, whatever it is, we are supposed as a researcher, we have to take. And the impartial in the sense of fair. Fair means you have to take as it is the opinions of the respondents or beneficiaries. That is most important. And the data that you collect, impartial means certain section of the people, their opinions are you have collected, and another section of the people you went to, say for example, you go to other village of the same problem, who are facing the same problem in other village. If you reach those people and they say, if they say negatively or positively, if they say, which is not coincide with the previous people, previous sections of the people, doesn't matter what is that, you are not supposed to, and those sections of the people are related to you or nearer to you. So if they are nearer to me, I can change it. Like that, you are not, as a researcher, we are not supposed to modify it, the opinions collected at the grassroots level. So impartiality must be there, fairness must be there in the data collection. Then only you can give. Why I'm telling you, the fair and impartial, whenever you take up in the investigation, then definitely you can give a concrete suggestions, recommendations can be given. Otherwise, if any deviations that are taking place in your investigation, then definitely you cannot give a concrete suggestion or recommendations. So whatever suggestions, recommendation that you give, definitely that cannot be worked out. That cannot, because you have partiality is there in your investigation. The point is now it should be fair conduct of investigation, impartial conduct of investigation is very important. Then only you can present, you can report the information, the data analysis can be interpreted on the basis of that. So why I'm talking this is interpretation writing is very important. That's what I told you. No? Interpretation writing on the basis of impartial and fairness. So on the basis of that, you have to develop the interpretation, and you can give appropriate, the recommendation sessions, which are very important for solving the existing problem. And the people will come out, the beneficiaries will get really benefit out of it. So that is very important. That should be kept in mind. Next, you have the technical language to be minimized. You are not supposed to put a lot of, the technical technical languages and all that should be. If you keep more technical language which is not understandable, it is difficult. So the report should always, the presentation should always be, it is not technical language, no technical language should be used. And as far as possible, the technical language should be avoided, so that what happens, the people can easily understand it. End of the day, what I am mean to submit before you is, end of the day, every person should understand, because we need to disseminate. We are not supposed to, any research findings are not supposed to hide. it should be disseminated, because it is for the welfare of the society, welfare of the people, welfare of certain sections of the people you are conducting. So that is why technical language must be avoided. Brief, easy vocabulary, that's what I told you a few seconds back. So that has to be written, and that has to be kept in mind while writing the or preparing the report. Revise and rewrite. See, a draft, once you prepare, you are not supposed to, as a researcher, we are not supposed to conclude that it is final report. Because once you go on conducting, once you conduct a research, once you are in the process of investigation, you will come across many things that whatever things that you are coming across, you are go on writing all those points. And those points sometimes, some incorporations also will be there in between. So the draft, once you prepare that, first draft will not be the final draft. You need to revise it, rewrite it, go on rewriting it. So many rewritings will take place. That is why PhD thesis, if all of you are aware, all of you are PhD holders here, many of you are even scholars also there in this gathering. You're all aware that writing, rewriting, the such supervisors will ask the scholars. Why? Because for good quality of product, to bring the good quality of the thesis, the writings, rewritings will be asked. Because today whatever is written, that may be changed tomorrow. So that is why you need to keep it. You need to keep it the certain things. That is why rewriting draft many times, that gives a quality of the product and all that, quality of the writing, that will ensure, that can be ensured. Confidentiality of the data, the such findings are not to be hide, but the data should be maintained the confidential. For example, you have collected the data from different people, their names, from whoever, from whom you have received the collected the data, their names, their personal profile should not be revealed. It should be hidden. The data confidentiality means the beneficiaries, whoever is giving the information, their data, their personal data must be put it in confidential. So once you collect the data, that has to be another step by step that will take. It can be analyzed with the statistical tools and all that, and the remaining components will follow it. Originality is very important. As far as originality, when you are writing a report, originality, you have to check all the time. Sometimes your own ideas, sometimes researcher ideas will incorporate it. It's not the researcher ideas, what exactly the investigation was telling. So that has to be taken. That is the originality. It's not the ideas of the researcher. Researcher is investigated and identified certain things, and he has written already in the draft. So that is originality. So when final draft is taking place, yeah, you as a researcher, we as a researchers, we are not supposed to include our completely our own ideas, and our own intention should not be incorporated, because you have collected data. That data is the basis for the and speaks about the originality and all that. So that is very important. When you are writing a report, originality must be maintained. Otherwise, if you copy, sometimes you may copy it also. Sometimes some researchers, they copy it, and as it is, if you copy it, then it will attract plagiarism and all that. So that then originality will be a question. Then nowadays, if you less than 10%, many of the universities scholars, when they are submitting, less than 10% plagiarism only should be ensured. If it is more than 10%, the thesis cannot be submitted. These are all things that are happening. So that is why originality is very, very important. And next we have
pitch, एक ही pitch है, tone, उसी पे बोले जा रहे हैं.
Any problem, madam? Excuse me.
बोरियत हो रही है.
Hello. Any problem? Let me continue.
Yes, sir. Please continue.
Okay. Thank you. Now, layout as per the objectives. So objectives you have to formulate, as I mentioned. When you formulate the objectives, on the basis of objectives, so the layout has to be layout in the sense of chapterizations, and the chapterization, first chapter, second chapter, third chapter, fourth, fifth, like that. How many chapter, whatever chapters that you have frame on the basis of objectives. So each objective generally one chapter will be kept for each objective to accomplish the objectives. Like that, the chapterization will be made. So that is what we call layout of the object. Next, solutions for the intellectual problems. So your writing is a simple. We have already discussed about it. And intellectual solution in whatever problems that you are facing, you are conducted investigation. For that, the ultimate end of the day, the solutions will be offered. It is very easy, and I already covered it. Logical analysis. So your writing should always be a logical, and it should evidences must be there. Logically, it should be fit. Your writing should be logically. Your evidence, your the recommendations or the interpretation or the findings that you have mentioned, presented, that has to be logical reason must be there. Why you have presented like that? Why you have analyzed like that? Why you have interpreted the information out of the data you have interpreted? That for that, the logical reasoning also you are supposed to mention in the writing. Other in your writing, report writing, or writing of in different components, discussion, findings, or the results. In these things, logical reasoning, logical analysis must be interpreted. Next, you have the different steps in research writing. Preparing the draft is draft. First of all, you have to prepare a draft. Of course, that it is a draft only. It is not. It will not be the final again, because so many modifications will go and come in that on the changing situations, and so many ideas you may get in between, and you have to incorporate them. New ideas, new things will be generated. Sometimes are happening in the society that also related to your problem, that also to take in. So that is why first draft you have to prepare till you submit the thesis, or till you send the article for publication or report preparation. So the draft has to be prepared first of all, and reviewing the draft. Second stage, in the second level, you have to review the draft. Once again, you have to go through from top to bottom the draft, how you have used the language, writing is a skill. And because the concise, as I mentioned a few minutes back, concise and briefly using liberal vocabulary and all that, and at the same time concise manner writing report. These are all the art. So your draft is to be reviewed. For what purpose you have to review means for incorporation of certain missing things, and if any ambiguity is there, say for example, to remove the ambiguity in so and so statements, review will helpful to the researcher to modify it. So that is why reviewing the draft is very important. Author's purpose. Author's purpose means the investigator or his what is his purpose? His purpose is to accomplish the objectives of the investigation, and that is the purpose of conducting of any the problem, any empirical study. So that purpose has to be served. Whether it is, sometimes as I mentioned, deviations will take place. Whether any deviations are there, every time you need to check the sometimes unknowingly also it happens, deviations may take place. Whether it is related to the objective, are you going according to the objective frame, or you are out of the objective, you are running out. So that you have to check it, and if it is happening deviations, then immediately you have to correct it and you have to modify it. So reader's profile also very important. The reader's profile means all the people related to this problem, related to the problem that you are investigating, may not be highly qualified, and some people are graduates, some people are postgraduates, some people are doctorates, and some people are in schooling level, their knowledge, their qualifications, and some people are illiterate sometimes. So keeping all the readers profile into mind, because easily understandable, I told in the mentioned a few minutes back. So readers profile is very important. It is related to that. So that profile should be taken into consideration. And content, as I mentioned, already covered. The pages are not important. The content matters, and meaningful content, important content related to the problem only. You have to stick to the problem. Whether exaggerations and all that should be avoided. Length also, I already talked about it. Length is not the criteria, and the content is very important. Exaggerations and the difficult phrases and all that should not be incorporated. Language and tone, that also there I already talked about it. Appearance, the structure of the report writing, and how you are interpreting, these all will come under that. Proofreading, and finally you have proofs are meant to be corrected. The without proofreading, sometimes grammatical mistakes may be there. Sometimes the some printing mistakes may be there. So that gives a different meaning. For example, if these things are happening in findings and the discussion part, then the negative meaning it will take place. So that is why proofreading, in the proofreading, all grammatical mistakes will come out, can be identified, and with that what happens, you can remove it and you can modify it, you can rectify it. So that proofreading will be helpful. Grammatical mistakes also can be rectified. So final printing, so that after all completion of all these things, and finally research can go for printing and all that. Next, how to write. Now we have come to our the components. How to write findings and discussion. So the presents the data, the facts, what you found, calculated, discovered, observed, logical, and organized introduction. So the point is the data should be presented. Findings and discussion means how to write the findings. Findings, as I mentioned, on the basis of data only. Data, once you collect, what I told you, it has to be analyzed with the help of different relevant tools and all that. And once it is analyzed, you found what you found. What you found, your hypothesis also has to be on the basis of objectives. Hypothesis will be framed, and whether the hypothesis is correct or not, that also you can found, whether it is significant or not significant, that all will found. Calculated, discovered, observed, logical reasoning, and the organized how you have organized the structure of the report and all that, how you have written, all those things depends upon the presentation of the data and analysis of the data. And next, you actually get to write about what you have done rather than what others have said about your subject area. It's not the others have already done. It is you to give the present solutions for the present problem. Of course, the problem might be there earlier also, but their suggestions, their findings may be different according to the situations of those days they have given. But here you are conducting now as an investigation. So what are the suggestions that you are going to give, that you have given, and how you have interpreted those solutions? It is not on the basis of others. You have conducted, you have investigated, and on the basis of that, you have to give the original suggestions on the basis of data, on the basis of findings and all that. Use good quality image and give caption. Good quality images. Sometimes images also we take, and images, when you take good quality images, because images a layman can understand by seeing the images and all that. So the image, whether it is a picture, whether it is a graph or whatever it is, images, when you take it, it should be legible and understandable, and clarity must be there. At the same time, for example, tables are there. Your data you have analyzed with the help of statistical tools, relevant statistical tools, and the tables are generated. When tables are generated, you are supposed to give captions. You are supposed to give titles of the table, and source also you have to mention under the table, from how you have the table is generated, and the data incorporated in the table, how, from where you have got it, the primary data source, primary data, like that. You have to mention. Provide logical scientific analysis findings of the findings. So the logical analysis, scientific analysis is important. Logical and scientific. It should not be the vague statement. You are not supposed to write. You are not supposed to interpret in the text. So your findings should be logical and scientific manner. You have to give. Anybody can check it, and some proofs also, evidences also must be provided in that, so that your analysis will be authentic, and nobody can say that it is vague or any confusions, and nobody can point out it, because it is scientifically you are proving it. So that is why that can be ensured, that you have to report in your writing. That is very, very important. Next, you have present evidence to support your analysis by citing by citations, earlier such as existing theories. See, the important point is usually whenever you write, whenever you analyze or findings or discussions that you are presenting, you are supposed to support your findings. You are supposed to support your discussion part. How to support means you are supposed to take the citations of other researchers which are appropriate to your work. So that citation must be given to your work so that it will be supported. So on the basis of that, this has happened, and that your analysis also, on the basis of your analysis that you have you found like this, and this is supported earlier by so and so. The problem on that day at that time, what was the problem? For that problem, that has the solution is given like this, and in the existing situations I have conducted like this, and the solution has the findings and discussion. The findings has come like this, and you are supposed to give all these things in the discussion part, and in the discussion part your discussion should be supportive. Otherwise, for supportive, you need to take the citations, then only it will be supportive. Otherwise it will be vague, and it will become your own. It should not be your own, and it should be your ideas, your findings, your analysis, your discussion should be supportive. Next, present evidence. Evidences are this the citations one. So support your analysis by citing earlier such as existing theory. That's what I explained just now. Next, how to write findings discuss continuation to the previous slide. 5 to 10 citations can be given to support the argument. When you are presenting a report, writing a discussion part, you are supposed to mention in that 5 to 10 citations wherever it is necessary. There you are supposed to mention cite the support the citations with the citations. So that is one important for your argument and all that. And how your result, like that you have to write the information or present the information in the text. How your results agree or disagree with the previous, and why. So if it is not agree with the previous researcher, why it is not agreeing? What are the situations that the previous what were the situation prevalent in previous, and what are the situation prevalent now, and why it is not agreeing? If it is not agree or disagree, why it is not agreeing? What are the situations today related to that problem? All these things deeply you are supposed to report or write in the discussion part and the results part. And next, in the case of the quality report section, qualitative report section, the findings are more text based rather than tabular form. The qualitative research you might be knowing, and the tabular form may not be there, and you have the findings on the basis of the review of literature, and the opinions also will be collected, but on the basis of that, graphs will be presented, relationship of different variables will be tested with the opinions and all that, and on the basis of that, the findings will be interpreted, and that can be analyzed through discussions and all that. So that part also very, very important in the case of qualitative report section when you are going through. Next, discussion includes limitations, implications of findings or results, also speaks about the future research. So discussion should always, these are all the contents that discussion should have. What are these contents? It includes the discussion should include the limitations of your study. You have, what is the meaning of limitations of the study? Say for example, you have taken a particular area. Say for example, a case study, you have taken a case study of so-and-so district of your state. Say for example, when you take a particular state in the country, in a state, in a district, if you take, that is your limitation. You are not conducting 2 districts or comparative study. If you conduct 2 districts or 3 districts or 2 states, you can compare, but it is confined to only 2 states if it is a comparative study of 2 states. It's not more all states that you are not taking into consideration for this. So that is what we call the limitation. And the limitation also another again the resources that are available for the conducting of the study, empirical study, or investigation to conduct an investigation on so and so problems. Certain resources are also will be limited. So these are all limitations of this study. So that you have to should be mentioned in the discussion part when you are arguing, when you are presenting it. In the writing part, you are supposed to mention not only the implications of the findings. If the recommendations under this, if your recommendations are implemented, what is going to be done? How whether the who will get benefit and how they get benefit, how much time it takes for experience the benefits and all that, what implication, whether disadvantages or advantages, which are more, all those things. If it is an advantage situations are coming out of the problem, how they will come out from the problem. These are all implication stages also you are supposed to mention briefly in the discussion part. Also speaks about the future research is also very important because you are not going to cover entire the problem area. So you are taking certain amount of certain area of the problem also. You are leaving other area. Why? Because I told you there are many constraints will be the resources constraints, and the time constraints will be there. These are all constraints. When these are all constraints are there to the researcher, to the investigator, then definitely some areas will be left over will be there. So those areas, what are the important areas that you are not touched upon? Those areas can be put as a future research. So the future researchers can concentrate on the same problem, whatever areas that you are not touch upon, those areas the future the researchers can concentrate for the in the days to come on those areas. So these are all things that are should be mentioned, that are should be focused or written, should be written in the discussion part. Next, you have the findings discussion is a purpose. What is the purpose of this findings and discussion when you talk about? The aim of the results and discussion to speak about answers, research questions, and their implications. So at the end of the day, what I mentioned in the previous slides also, the researcher, the investigator should keep in mind when he is writing the findings or discussion part. It should speak about the answers of the research questions. Research questions answers must be there briefly in the discussion part. And the implication, I already mentioned the previous slide, the implications of your study. That should be mentioned. That is the purpose of the findings and discussion part. This purpose is, say, for example, neglected or omitted or not focused or not touched upon, say, then the discussion findings part is of no meaning. So that is why it should speak about the implications and the research questions, whatever you framed in the beginning. While you are going through the review of literature, you framed the research questions now. So those research questions, what are the answers for those research questions that you are supposed to talk on it. And of course, research questions are nothing but I told you now the objectives. On the basis of research questions, on objectives will be formulated. So these are all things must be, that is the purpose of the findings discussion part. And the processing includes the discussion part. That process includes editing. Editing means verifying data to detect errors and omissions. Sometimes what happens when you are editing the text in the writing, in your writings, editing part is very, very important. Huh? So why should we edit? Because some errors will be there, some the data omissions will be there. So that has to be taken into consideration. Say, for example, I'll tell you, questionnaire if you take, and if you take to the questionnaire to the respondents or to the beneficiaries, say, for example, for obtaining the opinions from them, naturally what happens, certain questions the beneficiaries may not give answer. So why? Because it is not related to them. So simply what you will put it, the unanswered questions like that you may. So these unanswered questions will create a problem when you are analyzing the data. So that is why unanswered question, there should not be better. You please see all of you. Of course, you're all knowing the unanswered questions should not be there. If unanswered questions are there, errors, more unanswered questions, more errors will be generated. So that problem will be. So that has to be in editing part. Better in the beginning itself, when you are obtaining the data, better you have to get the information from the respondents. If any question is not answered by the respondents, better you remove it from the questionnaire, so that what happens, the problem will not be there. Otherwise, for that question, if they are not answering, what will be the question in the place of that question? You ask them, because they are they are experiencing people of the problem. So that is why they can suggest to the researcher, because they are experiencing the problem and we are meeting them to collect their opinions. So that is why, in what form, in what way the question, you have gone to them, you went to them with a question. If it is not related to them, let them, you ask them better. They will they will modify it. They will give their opinion on the question, in what way the question should be there. They will, because that is all I told you and I mentioned in the pilot study, all those modifications will be done. And once you conduct the pilot study, and I don't think there will not be any, the omissions and errors will be to the maximum possible extent. You can, that problem will be solved, and you can easily get the opinions, data from them, and interpretations, findings, and analysis findings, and all that can be done effectively, and ultimately the result also will become good. Next, you have coding. You have to give in the questionnaire. Once you prepare the questionnaire, when you administering the questionnaire, for each respondent, you have to give a code. Instead of taking their name and all that, better you have to give. Usually, we have to give a code for each and every beneficiary. So that coding or assigning numerals and symbols, also in the form of numerals and symbols, you can give a coding. You can frame a coding, and you can, because the personal data is confidential. That is why. And that is one thing. Classification data to be grouped according to the homogeneity. Homogeneity means, for example, age group, if you take 10 to 20, for example, 20 years to 30 years, 30 years to 40 years, 40 years to 50 years, and 50 years to 60, like that, if you take the age group. So age group, one age, 20 to 30 years age group, if we are taking, why? Because there is a homogeneity. So this group, 20 to 30 years age group, their ideas will be different, and their thinking will be different, their perception will be different. And the next group, their perception will be different because of their age and all that, their perception. So it varies. The perception will vary from one group to another group because of the age, or because of their experiences, and because of the experiences of the problem that they are experiencing, the problem that they are experiencing of different sections of the people. Different sections of the people, you have to group it as per the age, and as per the literacy, illiteracy point of view also, you can group it. So if you group it like this, what happens, graduation, post graduation, schooling, like that, if you group what you, then the perception will come. For example, schooling people, schooling qualified people, how they are thinking about, what is their perception, we can easily analyze it. And at the same time, the graduated people, how they are feeling it, that can be easily, if you form a second, if you group them, it will be easy to analyze. And the the interpretation also will become very easy. You can analyze it, and you can discussion part also, you can take them as a group, and you can express the ideas with by taking all the support citations and all that. So that will become very easy. So then next, you have speak the cause for particular results. A particular result, when you get, what are the reasons for that? What are the causes for that? That also you are supposed to speak. So and so results have come. What is the of course, basis is data only, but why it happened, whether it is negative or positive, you can take anything. If it is negative, why that negative situations or negative perceptions in their mind? The results means that from the data, results will come. That result of a particular group. If it is a negative opinion, why that negative opinion they framed in their mind? If it is a positive opinion, why they positive opinion they framed in the mind? As per the groups, as per the sections of the people, homogeneity of the people, that we can discuss excellently in the discussion part and all that. That is another purpose. Next, you have the explain the significance of results in research study. Significance of result is very important, because we are conducting the research study for result oriented. So once results, of course, results may be, as I mentioned, results may be positive or negative, whatever it is. But the results is a significant part. So that result, once you take out from the comes out from the findings, the data analysis, that has to be interpreted, that has to be present, focused very importantly. Next, original results derived and expectations to compare. Original results, that's what. When you take original data without cooking in the kitchen, the kitchen means, I tell you, nowadays, I'm not generalizing. Some people, what they do is, it came to my notice, some people, what they do is, for example, questionnaire, when they take to the investigators, they will collect some opinions from the some sections of the people. Say, for example, 350 is the sample size of a researcher. Of course, we will not do like that, but let us, some researchers are doing it, may do it like this, because it has come to my notice also. So just say, for example, I'm telling you, it's only example. It's not, I'm not generalizing it. Everybody, I'm not saying that everybody will do like this one. 350 is the sample, and 100 sample, if they yeah, they collect, they collected directly from the respondents. And what happened, remaining 250, what they do is, they will see the 100 sample, how they have given the answers for different questions and all that. They will check it on the basis of that remaining whatever sample yet to be collected, data yet to be collected, that will be cooked upon, cooked on the basis of the 100 whatever data is collected. And finally, they will not go to the grassroots level. It is not correct. It is not. We cannot say that, and we cannot assure that. We cannot say that it is original. How can you? How can we say that it is original unless you, without reaching them, and if you on the basis of the 100 people you have collected data, but not on the basis of 100 people, you have to fill the questionnaires on your own, and the rest of the 150 or 250, whatever sample is there. So that should not be done. So each and every sample, you have to fill with the in consultation with the beneficiary, so that the result will come out. Original result will come out. That original result is very, very important for solving the problem. So it is very important. We are not supposed to forget it. And we are a researcher, and we are meant for to offer solutions for the problems. So that is why a correct solution should be given, means we have to take the original data, complete data we have to obtain from the grassroots level, and that has to be generated and analyzed, and then we'll get the original results. That will be compared, the expectation and results derived and expectations to compare. So that can be done very easily and effectively. Then quality research will come out. That is one thing. Next, we have writing presentation, presentation of findings, results. Findings, when you talk about all findings are the findings or results to be presented in a tabular or graphical manner, and to be described. So the findings, results may be presented in a tabular. I told in the previous slides also, the data, once you obtain, the data has to be analyzed in the form of tabular forms or graph problems. The data, if it is related to the tabular form, you have to generate it as a tabular form. Nowadays, SPSS is there, and graph forms in a graphical manner also. You can graphical. We use graphs for certain data. Why? Because actually the graphs can understand even a non-researcher. Non-researcher means the person who is not having the knowledge of research, not having the research bent up. They also can, or a layman can easily understand the graphical form, because the histogram or pie charts, if you take, it can be easily understandable, because there are so many colors, and the lengths and heights will be there. If the histograms and the pie charts and all that can, by seeing it, people can easily understand what was the problem, and the intensity or the development or growth, whatever it is related to the problem, that can be easily understandable if graphs are used. but some all data cannot be used in terms of the graphs, and tabular is very, very important. But understand purpose point of view, the graphs also graphs will be given clarity for certain sections of the people. But both are important. It's not that one form is important, another form is not like that. In a research tabular, but the only thing is the researcher or the investigator should take according to the convenience and according to the requirement. It has to be taken into consideration accordingly. It has described, the data has to be described, and significant results only to be mentioned in the text. Sometimes the researchers usually will do insignificant, not significant results also will mention in the findings, but it's not required. Not significant results, if you mention, what is the importance? There is no need of interpreting the or writing the non-significant, not significant results. Anyhow, it is not significant, and there is no use of it also. So the significant results, if you take, that significant results speaks about speaks about much about the comparatively with the when you compare the not significant, the significant results, if you can interpret, if you can focus, if you can write, that gives that has got a lot of meaning, and such significant information only through results, whatever you get, that has to be presented in a brief manner in the in the report or in the thesis or in the article. Journal, and accordingly better you do it. If it is to be incorporated at the end of the article, you incorporate. If some journals are their guidelines in the middle of the article, wherever it is required, the table is required, wherever the tables are required, and they are if they ask you according to the guidelines to incorporate in the middle of the text or wherever it is required, you have to incorporate accordingly. So the point is here, when you are publishing a research article, you have to check the guidelines of that particular journal, and accordingly you have to incorporate the tables and all that. Or at the if it is asked you to incorporate at the end of the text, you have to do it like that. So the guidelines are to be followed. That is one important. Next, you have be small and meaningful. Like that, the title should be there for each and every table. And under the table, I told you, I mentioned in the previous slides also, source also must be mentioned. These are all part of the writing of the or generating or designing the tables and all. Results are the facts, facts findings. So that has to be, once you write the table, once you prepare the table, under that the results of the table, what it speaks. It is not that all components need to explain the table. In the table there are so many components may be there, but all components explaining, it's a huge amount of text it will come. So the point is, usually what the researchers will do is, in the table, some three components they take, three criteria they take. So for example, maximum value and the middle value and the minimum value. By taking these three values, the interpretation part will take place and they will explain about it. And in between also many components will be there, but those are in comparison you can just touch upon, but no need to focus the numericals of those variables and all that in the interpretation part I'm talking about. So that can be done. Next, findings, results, findings, Our results are the presentation, raw data from tables and figures. So this already we have discussed in the previous slides, the same thing. Present the results in the text, the theory, conceptualization framework. So the conceptualization is very important. Without when you are discussing a particular variable of a particular table, in particular variables in a table, you need touch about the directly. If you talk about the findings and all that, it may be a confusion sometimes. So that is why when you are describing a finding, a particular point, a particular variable or component, when you are describing the basic the conceptualization means in one sentence, sentence or one word, the concept of the basis of that finding also you are supposed to write, so that what happens, the reader can easily understand. Without understanding the concept of that particular component or variable, its nature, it cannot be understandable. Certain variables cannot be understandable. In that case, you are supposed to mention the concept. You are supposed to mention the conceptualization of that component or that variable. Then only people can easily understand. That should be very briefly, concisely, it should be mentioned. Present results. Next, present results on the basis of previous research findings into consideration. Previous researchers, their findings, I told you already, it has to be taken into consideration on the basis of that, because the problem is same now and then. So when problem is same, how he has presented and what are the conditions over there at that time and what are the conditions now, and how he has presented, you have to check it, and what are the conditions that according to present situations. On the basis of that, taking into consideration, why I'm telling you taking into consideration the previous research means you can easily compare it. Comparison is very important, because unless you compare, you don't know whether the problem is aggravated or reduced or increased. That is very difficult to understand. So that is why it has to be taken into consideration, the comparison and all that. Next, limitations of the research study to be acknowledged. So you are supposed to, as a researcher, otherwise as I mentioned a few minutes back, we cannot take, the researcher cannot be taken. The entire information, the entire area cannot be taken, which is related to that particular problem. Of course, it's a problem, there's no doubt about it. But the components which are all associated with that problem cannot be touched upon because of the constraints I told, time and the resources and all that becomes constraint. So in that situation, you are supposed to express what are the limitations of resources and what are the limitations of your study. That should be acknowledged. Otherwise, there will be an ambiguity that has to be written. Next, you have writing a presentation findings results in continuation to the previous slides. Explain about what the new areas to be considered for future research. What the new areas to be considered for future research. So future research I mentioned in the previous slides. New areas means as a research, earlier the researchers, what they left, what they did not touch upon, what are the areas they did not touch upon, what areas they spoke about, on what areas they conducted investigation, what areas they did not conduct, which are related to the same problem only. That we have to identify in the beginning only. It can be done. It will be done, and that has to be considered into taking into explain about new areas and consider the future research. So that has to be on the basis of that new research has to be mentioned. The components of a new research that are going to be conducted also should be mentioned in the presentation part. Next, we have, I already mentioned this, representative interpretations with evidences. Interpretations with the evidences, already told citations and the evidence for your argument, the evidence for your presentations are very important. Otherwise, it has got no validity. So validity, authenticity is very important. It's not the researcher opinion. If you don't give, what happens, it is the opinion. It understood that it is the opinion of the researcher. So you have to, it's not the researcher opinion. It is a broad perspective we have to take into consideration. Then the people, so the other researchers' investigations also, if you can match it, if you can support it, then your finding will become authentic, and there is a scientific approach. Then it can be called as a scientific approach. Next, we have defend the identity of respondents and participants. Respondents and participants identity is very important. Their interests are to be protected. Their interest means how they are experiencing. That has to be written very clearly. What are their experiences? What are their interests against the interest? If the problem means it is against their interest. So why it is against their interest? What are their interests? First of all, we have to identify them, and that has to be reported very clearly. And their interest must be supported, should be defended. That is very important. We are conducting to defend the people. We are conducting to bring out the people from the problem. So that is the investigator objective. So that is why we have to defend them in our arguments or in our analysis, and supportive for that supportive matter, supportive information wherever it is required, necessary. Then you are supposed to add such information to defend their interest and all that, their identity and all that. Next, present, that has to be focused in your writing, and then present the output of the experiments, finding of the research study, output of the experiments. Experiments earlier, this is almost similar to the previous one. Findings, research studies of earlier, you are supposed to mention how they have given their opinions, their solutions, recommendations. That has to be presented briefly, and which is supported to your, which should be supported to your suggestions or recommendations. Of course, it's very simple. Many of the points already covered. Some of the points are covered in the previous slides. I just skip them because of the time constraints and all that. Include only data of primary importance. So primary data is very important. It's not that secondary data. Secondary data already it is existed in the form of textbooks or in the form of journals. It is available in the journals, in the libraries, or in the bulletins. And news bulletins are there in different organizations. They already published. You taking those information is because it's all secondary data which is already published. And the primary data is important because the opinions will come out from the primary data, and the correct situations you can identify through analyzation, of their opinions. You can give perfect solutions for that. So that is why primary importance data is very important. Empirical, that is why I told you empirical studies, throughout of it, the correct solutions, and suggestions can be given, or recommendations can be given. Next, when you are writing, see, use past tense to present findings. So this is a language related point. The already you have conducted the study and it's over, investigations are over, you have analyzed it and you have incorporated everything. And but when you are interpreting in your writing, you are not supposed to use the present tense or the present continuous tense, because it's already done. When it is done, better you have to use always the past tense in the present when you are writing the findings and all that, because it is done. Highlight the main findings. Main findings should be highlighted. Main findings in the sense, how do you identify the main findings according to the objectives? Objectives from there are, say for example, 6 objectives are framed. The 6 objectives, what speaks 6 objectives basically talking about, those are the main findings that has to be highlighted. Because ultimately, I told you in the previous slides also, few minutes back, that objectives are to be accomplished at the end of the investigation. So what the objectives speaking about, and through objectives what you found, how you have accomplished the objectives and all that, that has to be written very clearly. And whether it is deviations, any deviations are there or not, that you have to check it. Should be clear. Findings are to be described in simpler and understandable. That already I discussed 2-3 times in the previous slides. Should be clear and easy to understand. This also the presentation part, reporting part should be clear, easy to understand. High vocabulary, difficult vocabulary. High vocabulary in sense, difficult vocabulary not supposed to use. It should be understandable. That I already told. I explained. Source of tables. Source of tables also told. Under each table you are supposed to mention source, primary data, like that. Okay, that is one important. And writing, the presentation of findings and results, continuation to the previous slides again. If data are abundant, there's a lot of data you have collected as a supplementary, use as a supplementary materials. If data are abundant data is there, use the supplementary materials also. Supplementary materials always support the data that, which is abundantly, if it is available, then the supplementary materials should be taken have to take, and you have to, if sometimes what happens, when you take the table, when you generate the table, when you analyze the table, when you analyze the data, when tables will be generated, so for chi-square, say for example, the values will be there. Those values you can interpret in the form of text. There's no need a table and all that. But different variables, different components, when you're talking about, it should be in the form of table only. So that is one thing. And key findings and offer some text that complements the findings. Key findings and offer some text that complements the findings means key findings are very important because it is a key finding, and that finding is very important for the beneficiaries to give concrete suggestions and recommendations. So that is why key findings are to be very while writing, it should be taken care of because it is most important for giving suggestions or recommendations. So that in writing part, when you are doing it, you have to take care about it, and be sure to number your figures and tables according to journal guidelines. That's what I told you. Each journal having its own guidelines and all that. We need to, as a researcher, we need to follow before you are sending it for publication. You need to go through the guidelines of different journals, or to which journal you are going to send the article for publication. First of all, you have to see the guidelines of the journal, and accordingly you have to prepare the article, so that there will be no problem and there will be no rejection of article from them. Present how the results answer the research questions of the study. So you need to present, the researcher need to present results, how results answer the research questions. So ultimately, the research questions in the beginning, when you are framing it, and the answers are to be found on the basis of the research questions. At the end of the day, at the end of the investigation, you have to check the research, what are the research questions that you have focused, and what are the answers that you have achieved out of it. That you have to check it, and that has to be presented in the text, in the report. Describe a problem understanding from the results. The problem understanding from the, what is problem and what type of results that has come. Sometimes every time we cannot say that a positive result for the problem or negative result. It may be anything. A hypothesis sometimes will be rejected, sometimes will be accepted. Doesn't matter. But the reason must be written clearly. Why hypothesis is accepted, why hypothesis is rejected. Null hypothesis and alternate hypothesis, those things are supposed to write clearly. And results answer the research objectives. So this is very clear. Objectives are to be answered by the research objective. This is already we explained in previous slides and all that. Next, you have discussion speaks about writing the discussion part. When you come to the discussion part, discussion speaks about the results, what it means. It speaks about the results, what it means. Discussion should include the supportive systems to your discussion, to your arguments, to your findings. When you take the findings and when you interpret the findings in the discussion part, you are supposed to, I told already, some support system with citations and the results, how the results have come, what are the reasons for the results, and with that result, what is the support, how you can support the result and all that. As a researcher investigator, that has to be mentioned in your writing. And discussion to start with the objective of the study. So objective orientation must be there when you are writing the discussion. Whatever objectives are there for your study, on the basis of objectives, you have to start the discussion part. Take the each and every objective wise and start the discussion. That will be the correct way of writing the discussion on that. Compare your results with the previous research. That is always will be there, because you need to check the previous problem, the previous research intensity, and previous problem and the existing problem. How far what are the changes in the problem may be same, but the intensity or the changes will may be different from, because of the time and because of the environment situations, because of the different aspects that influence the change of the the problem and all that. So that is why discussion part the objective, and compare your results with the previous research. That has to be mentioned, that has to be written clearly. Next, you have discuss results are significant or not significant. This is very important. Hypothesis. I told you just alternative hypothesis, null hypothesis, and these are to be discussed with the data that has been generated, analyzed, whether it is accepted hypothesis or rejected hypothesis is rejected or accepted. You as a researcher, you have framed a hypothesis. It may be done. Of course, at the end of the investigation, it is not done. Say, for example, it's not like that. Why it is not done? It is done. It is accepted. If it is not accepted, why it is not accepted? What is the reason for that? You have to discuss in the discussion part. If it is accepted, not accepted, reasons must be given clearly. Then it will be more effective. Discussion is where the knowledge of the original work claimed. So original work can be claimed with by seeing the discussion. So in the discussion part, the original the knowledge will be reflected. So that is why the discussion part should be taken care, because citations will be there, and support system material also, if any support material, so that also has to be incorporated briefly to support the results or findings of your work. That is important. Discussion should highlight the study contribution. These are all very simple points. Discussion is all about the implication of the findings. We already discussed about the implications of the findings and all that. That has to be there. It is one of the component of discussion. You have to speak about the implication of the findings in the discussion part. Implication is what is going to be done, and if it is implemented, what the results may, what the people is going to be experienced, and how it is, what may going to happen. All those things are to be included in this discussion part. Discussion represents how the findings are suited, related to, appropriate. So the findings, whatever you through your investigation, whatever findings that you obtained, so those findings in what way it is related to your study, that has to be defended, that has to be presented clearly. That is one thing. Next, you have things to be avoided in writing discussion. While you are writing discussion, what you are supposed to avoid, that is, first you have to see that repetition of your findings. So when you start writing, findings go on in 2 times, 3 times, every time. Whenever you are talking about the discussion, in the discussion part, 2 times, 3 times, more than 1 time, you are not supposed to repeat the same finding. So once you write the finding, you supportive information, citations, you just talk about, and there is no need to repeatedly mention about the finding and all that. Once it is mentioned enough, and you start discussion arguments on the basis of that, that's enough. So that is one thing. So you have to take care about the repetitions, whether the repetitions are there or not. In the when you are redrafting it, you have to identify them, and if it is there, you have to remove it. And presenting new data in your discussion. New data has to be new data. Presenting new data should not be there. There should not be new data which is not identified in the findings, that should not be incorporated. It has to be, if any, your new ideas which is not related to the data or analysis or findings, which is not related to that, your ideas should not be incorporated, and which is not related to that findings should not be incorporated. You have to avoid it. That is one thing. Next, too much exaggeration of findings. I told you in the previous slide also, exaggeration should not be should not take place in the discussion part. Overextending arguments. One argument, when you are argument should be everything. It should be simple and in one sentence. That's all. So you should understand that argument of one sentence should understand it should give the entire meaning of it. So it should not be extending paragraphs together, 2 paragraphs, 3 paragraphs, or one big paragraph completely devoting for extending of argument of that particular discussion. In the discussion part, it is not supposed to be taking. It's not supposed to take place. You have to avoid it, such type of writings. Next, interpreting beyond the justifiable data. Beyond the justifiable data, if you have to check whether the data is, to what extent your data is supporting, what extent your data speaks about. So to that extent only you are supposed to interpret, you are supposed to report. But beyond that, which is not there, which is not conveyed by the data, that is not supposed to be written. That is not supposed to be focused or not should not be reflected in the text. That is one thing. Next, discussion structure includes a discussion structure. Usually, what it should include means an overview of findings should be there. Concept to previous research must be there in that, and major findings must be there. Major findings means according to objective oriented, whatever findings are there, those findings you are supposed to incorporate. Findings of and the interpretations must be taken into consideration while you are writing the discussion part. Interpretation in the context of previous literature available on the study area. So interpret previous literature also can. That's what I told you. Citations can be given in the discussion. Should be given in the discussion part for supporting your discussion. So that is one. It discuss about the implication over a period of time. The discuss over a period of time what happens, what is going to be done, what is going to be experienced with this results, with the result of your investigation, what is going to be done. That has to be discussed. That should be one of the component of discussion part. It should be included. And discussion take place within the boundaries of limitations of the very important. Limitations of the boundaries of the limitation. You have every researcher, he is having certain limitations of his research study. And the limitations must be kept in mind. And beyond that, you are not supposed to add in the discussion part. So discussion take place within the boundaries of the limitations. So that is very important. Limitations as a researcher investigator, you know, what are the limitations? Say for example, I told you in the previous slide also. If you are study, for example, your study area is one district or one state or two states or two districts, that only you have to talk about. That is your limitation. So two studies if you take, it is only the comparison between the two studies, not other states in the country. You are not going covering, you are not going to cover all the states in the country. So that is very important. So that is a limitation. So limitations of your study should be taken into consideration while you are discussing. Other than your limitations of the study, are not supposed to incorporate, and should not be reflected in the discussion part. That is one thing. Next, discussion part deals with the numerical and descriptive words. Numericals part deals with the numerical table should not be there. When you can talk about the numbers, figures, percentages we can talk about, and you can compare those things with the previous research findings. For that purpose, you can take the percentages and numericals. You can take it for comparison purpose and all that. The previous researchers and existing investigations. Discussion part should speak only existing findings and not new results which are not analysis, which are not there in the analysis. So discussion part should speak. It's very simple. The present existing investigation, what it speaks about, that has to be mentioned. And only for comparison purpose, you can take the previous research investigations, but you have to focus more on the existing study, the findings and all that, and the results of the existing study results you have to take and you have to talk about in the discussion part. That is one thing. Next, discussion structure, continue to previous slides. Extract the principles, the relationships, generalizations, these things. You have to extract the principles, relationships of different variables, different components, and generalizations. These are all to be included in the discussion part. That is one thing. And present, these are all simple points you can, but you have to, as a researcher, when you are writing the discussion part, you are supposed to incorporate these things. That is what I'm telling you. There are so many points are there. These are all points must be kept in mind, because you have to write all these things when you are writing the discussion part, conclusion part, a future research implication, whatever you write, you have to keep in mind these points so that you will not be deviated and you will be within the framework. So that is very important. These are all theoretical background, theoretical base only, but even then it is very, very important. Otherwise, your report or your thesis or your article will not be correct. So that then if it is article, it will not be accepted for publication, because these are all certain things which are mandatory to keep in mind, especially writing, when you are writing the or reporting the information. Because writing is, as I mentioned, two sides of the coin. One side is investigation, other side writing, report writing. These two are most, you cannot neglect the writing part. Though you are conducted very nicely, effectively the investigations, but writing is omitted, or writing is not properly done, then what happens? It will not give effectiveness, and people cannot understand it, and you cannot give appropriate recommendation suggestions. But then what is the use of it? So that is why it is most important. Investigation is important. Two sides I am talking about: investigation, report writing. These two are very, very important. Report writing should speak. Report writing, writing of research components should speak about the investigation. So investigation should be done appropriately. On the basis of that, writing speaks about. So writing, you have to take all this necessary care. Then only you can give right information. You can convey correct information to the authorities, or to the people, or to the beneficiaries for solving the problem and all that. Next, you have the present analysis model or theory. Show relationship between the results, analysis, model or theory, that you have to, how you are interpreting, how the relationship of different variables and components in your research study, that has to be analyzed properly, and that has to be interpreted, that has to be written very clearly. Avoid extensive citations. Citations, I told you to give 5 to 10 citations. That does not mean that you have to give more number of citations. If some people says that if more number of citations, if you give, your text will be more protective. It's not like that. The protect or defending of your text not depend on the completely on citations. So citations are more number of citations, and your text, your findings or your analysis is very less. Then what does it mean? So your analysis of findings is very important. The only thing is, to support the findings or analysis of your investigation, the citations are important. Wherever it is required, that you have to support it with the appropriate citations and reference. It does not mean that more number of citations than the original text. It's not like that. Now, extensive citations should not be there. That should be taken into consideration while you are reporting or writing. And next, compare with a few existing studies. Existing studies on the same area should be taken into consideration for comparison purpose. This already we discussed earlier also in many slides. Don't mix results with discussion. So results are different, discussion is different. Results and discussion both should not be mixed. So you have to talk separately the results. Results is different, and discussion is discussion on the basis of result. It will be there. So results and discussion should not be put together. First, you have to speak about the results, and then on the basis of results, what is the appropriateness of result, and how the results are implementable, and what are the implications of the result. That all those things you are supposed to discuss, you are supposed to incorporate in the discussion section. So both should not be mixed together. Then it will be a problem. So avoid sudden introduction of new ideas. The new idea should not be immediately incorporated, which is not related to your own idea, not the ideas of the investigator. Your own idea should not be investigated, should not be interpreted, should not be incorporated in the study area. It is related to the study area only. New areas should not be touched upon. That is one thing. Next, we have discussion structure includes, in continuous the previous slides, limitations of the study area and the data. We have to stick to the limitations of the study area and the data. This already I told in the previous slide. Provide logical and scientific analysis of the findings. This also we discussed in the previous slides. So logical and scientific analysis must be there, so that your results will be correct. And for example, if you don't use the appropriate statistical tools, then what happens? The results will not be correct. And the scientific analysis means you are supposed to use this SPSS statistical tools, and statistical tools also is not that according to your will and wish. So the tools that you are going to use should be related, should be appropriate to the data that you have for analysis. So every data will not be cannot be used for example, chi-square cannot be used for every data. So regression, correlation, and the other so many tools are there. So every tool, whatever tool you interested, that cannot be used for the analysis of your data. It's not your interest, and the appropriateness of the data, on the basis of that, the tool is to be used, so that that will be scientific, and the results also will. That is very, very important when you are writing part, when you take into consideration. If include, if an unnecessary information, by the components of conclusion. So that is components means, I told you just now, methodological issues and all other issues, what I told you just now, that has to be framed. And writing conclusion part, in continuation to that, reviewing the findings also. Not only the previous points, these points also you are supposed to add in the conclusion. You are supposed to ensure in the conclusion part, review of the findings of the review in a simpler, very important findings, notable findings. So you have to mention implications of the findings also you have to mention in the conclusion part. And conclusion should be written in a very clear words. There should not be any ambiguity. And when you are writing the conclusion, the what I mentioned in the previous also few minutes back, the the high vocabulary, the hard vocabularies and all that should not be used, and the grammatical mistakes all should be checked, and the above text should be taken into consideration. What I mentioned, methodological issues and all that, and implications of the findings, all these things should be ensured. Logical conclusion based on the findings, that also should be mentioned in the conclusion. Limitations of the study to be discussed in one single sentence. What are the limitations of your study? Why you have taken up to this level? Why you are not beyond that level? Why you are not gone for analysis and all that? The reasons also should be mentioned in that. Reasons means not elaborate, small in one single sentence, like that you have to mention. It should explain how the objectives of the study are accomplished. I already mentioned. Briefly summarize some of the main points also should be summarized. So these are all the components that are to be there in the conclusion. Also, in addition to that, convert the statistical language to academic language. Statistical language you are not supposed to use again in the conclusion part. Academic language, because conclusion should not be incorporated the numericals and all those things again, because you have already used in the findings analysis, you have used all those things. So again, you are not supposed to use the same thing in the conclusion part. So academic language, you have to convert the statistical language into academic language. That is very, very important. So explain how your work advance in the field. So in what way your work is going to be advanced in the field of your research, or related to your problem, in what way it is advanced, in what way it helps the people who are suffering with that problem. So that you have to include. These are all components which are very, very important, because conclusion is very important part to be taken into consideration while the investigator writing his study, his conclusion part at the end of the study. Suggest future experiments. Future experiments what can be done on the same area, that has to be mentioned. Simple points, these are all, but it should be ensured. All these points must be ensured. Next, you have make sure the reader feels like a come way with some inputs. He is taking away some. Once he go through it, he should feel that I am taking. These are all the inputs that I am taking away from this article, from this investigations, like that. He should feel. Otherwise, it is of no use. So that is one thing. Provide justification for the work. Whatever work that you have done, that justification must be given in one single sentence in the conclusion part. These are all very, very important components that are to be ensured in the conclusion part. Then only it will be effective. That's what I am telling. Conclusion should be to the point. So it should be, you have to stick to the point only, and not beyond the more elaborations, explanation you already given in the findings analysis part. You have already given. No need to repeat them again and again. You have overall picture you have to provide with including all these points. So follow your research questions, methods, results, all these things. You have research questions earlier, you have framed in the beginning, and you have the methods, different methods that you have conducted for investigation, methods that you have adapted. All those things you have to talk about. Assertive but balanced, confident. Your conclusion should speak about confidently. So a confident message should be given. Decisive. It should be made as a decisive. Decisions can be taken on the basis of that. Like that, it has to be generated. It has to be framed. The conclusion part. It is summarization of the implication of the findings as discussed earlier. So it is that's what I am telling now. Overall, the overall summary, the conclusion part, it should incorporate by taking all the above points for the last 2-3 slides, whatever points I'm given you. All those inputs must be ensured in the conclusion part when you are writing it. And the sweeping statements unrelated to the study area should not be given. Sweeping statements, it is not no way related to the study, but sweeping statements, it will be done like that. It will be, if it is not done, it will not happen like that. It is not such type of sweeping statements should not be given. Whatever statements that you incorporate, that should be based on certain evidences, on the basis of evidences that you have mentioned in the previous pages, previous investigations. The previous investigation, in your investigations, whatever you have the information analysis that you have made, on the basis of that, you are supposed to give statements, but not the sweeping statements which are not related, which are not, which should not be exaggerated like that. And next you have writing part, conclusion. These are all very important because many points are there, but these are all important points you have to keep in mind to prepare the conclusion. Conclusion is not speak beyond the data collection. So data is your limit. So you are supposed to talk to the, when you are writing the conclusion, you are within the ambit of the data collection only you are talking about. You are not beyond the data. It is not there in your, and it is hypothetical issues should not be talked in the, should not be presented in the conclusion part. This is very important. And he has to present the value addition for the study. Present value addition means already some researchers given certain recommendations on the same problem earlier. So your study also should give some value addition to the present problem. Otherwise, if it is not a value addition, it is of no use for conducting the investigation or for offering suggestions to, or solving, for giving suggestions or recommendations for the problem. So these are all very important. There should not be ambiguity with regard to the way of reader. Ambiguity, confusion should not be created. Conclusion should be explained how the objective of the study are accomplished. So this already we have talked about. Next, you have, there are certain do's and don'ts also. When you are writing conclusion, you are supposed to do these things, and you are not supposed to do certain things. Those are all listed out. I just read out these points and I'll explain. First one, briefly summarize some of the main points. This already I explained the previous slide. These are all do's I'm talking about. Keep it short and sweet. So conclusion part, I told you to include all the points, 2-3 slides points. I told you to keep in mind while you're writing the conclusion, but it does not mean that prepare more lengthy of text and all that. 1 page, 2 pages, 3 pages conclusion should not be framed like that. But you have to keep all the information points, whatever I have discussed with you, all those points you have to keep in mind, and you have to concise the information in a smaller paragraph, and you have to present it, you have to report it. So keep it short and sweet. Try to sound authoritative on your subject. So it should be authoritative. Authoritative means yes, it can be implemented. These sessions are very important for implementing to solve the problems which are facing by the a section of the people. Like that, some authoritative must be there. Then only they can. Then only it can be implementable. Otherwise, if any confusion as investigator, if investigator is having certain confusion, then implementation part becomes difficult. So that is why sound authoritative on your subject is very, very important. Then only you can give clarity in the conclusion part. End with a flourish. So you have to give a positive thought. At the end of the conclusion, a positive thought should be given. A positive thought should be generated in the minds of the readers. That is very important. Next, you have the don'ts. You are not supposed to keep these things when you are writing the conclusion part. Say, for example, don't repeat the abstract or results. There is no need to repeat the abstract information and the results. You have already explained in the previous, in the investigations, when you are analyzing the data, you have already given the information. Again, in the conclusion, all those things no need to incorporate or interpret or report. You have to give a overall picture, that's all. You're not supposed to copy paste the abstract information or results information again in the conclusion part. Don't quote if possible. Quotations better not to give in the conclusion part. Don't use fluffy language. Unnecessary languages or exaggerations, all those things you should not supposed to use in the conclusion part. Don't lead the reader as to with the new materials. So new materials, numericals, and the percentages again, and new information, new ideas, these all should be avoided these all should be avoided in writing, so that a clarity must be given about what exactly the investigation speaks about. Overall information should be given, that's all. Don't focus on minor point or issue. Minor points, if any minor points are there, better you don't talk about all those things. So major findings only you have to speak on that in the conclusion part. Don't use appears to be, seems to, probably. These are all no place. These words are not supposed to use in the conclusion, because you have already conducted and you have to come to conclusion. And when you come to conclusion again, if you use it seems, probably, appears to be, it gives confusion. And the people, readers will think that the investigator himself is not sure about it. Like that, that meaning will come. So that is why better not to, not better. You are not supposed to use, it seems, probably, appears to be. These words are not supposed to be there in the conclusion part, because you have conducted confidently, results have come, results have come, and you have confidently explained it, and you have given all the information also. So then there is no question of place for these words. It seems, so, appears to be, probably. These things are not, have no place in the, should not be there in the conclusion part. Don't start conclusion with any of these words. In conclusion is already conclusion. There is again a writing of in conclusion, no meaning. You are writing conclusion only. Again, writing starts with in conclusion. Like that, if you start the sentence, there is no meaning of it. As already you have put the heading conclusion. Again, don't write in the it should not start with the in conclusion. So that you have to avoid. Finally, sometimes some people they use finally. That word also will be used. So it should not be used. It is already conclusion. You have put heading as I mentioned just now, and finally word should not be in the end. You're already come to an end. Again, there's no need to use the word in the end. So these are all the things that you are not supposed to use. Don'ts in the conclusion part. How to write managerial implications? This is very important. Implications are on the basis of on the basis of to make recommendations. So implication part is very much useful on the basis of recommendations. For making recommendations, implications are the basis. So on the basis of implications only, the whatever recommendation that you want to give, you can frame it. So that is one thing. And what action to be taken to solve the identified problem. So managerial implication means it's nothing but decision making only. So in decision making, if you take a particular decision on the basis of findings, what type of, whether how far the problem can be solved, to what extent the problem can be solved, all those things will speak under the implication part. So next, how to generalize the results of the study. You have to generalize. It's not that a few people, it's not that one section of the people, at least to larger extent of the society, it should be useful. It's not that a small group of the people it should confine. So at least minimum, a larger to the maximum possible extent, the recommendation that you give on the basis of your findings, investigations, that has to be implementable to a larger extent, at least to the maximum larger extent. We have to apply. Next, a key diagnosis to be revealed in the part of the implementation process. Key diagnosis means the problem when you identify, the solution. Diagnosis is nothing but the solution or the way out way out from the problem. That has to be given in a keen manner, means carefully and correctly that you have to give. It should speak about the investigation findings, should speak about completely the way out of the problem. That is what we call, so that the problem will be solved. So that is what exactly real diagnosis on the problem. That is what we call real investigation for the problem. Diagnosis or investigation. The diagnosis, once you found the diagnosis are nothing but findings also you can say about. So on the basis of diagnosis, the recommendations can be made. Methodological issues play an important role in the implication. So methodological, what type of methodology that you have adopted, that has to be mentioned for important role in the implication. Implication means it gives a negative result after implementing it. What are the things that are going to happen? That all depends upon the methodological issue that you have adopted when you are investigating, when you are conducting investigation. So these are all the things that you have to incorporate in the managerial implication. In addition to that, in continuation, how far the study results creates a successful endeavor. This is very important. That has to be mentioned in the managerial implication. How far the findings results, how far the findings or results are cost effective as far as implementation point of view. Cost effective is also very important. Sometimes it is more cost effective for implementation. It becomes a difficult for implementation. You have given excellent recommendations, suggestions, but it is more costly for implementation, more expensive for implementation. Then again, there is a budget problem will be there. It is a burden on the exchequer of the organization, say for example, or on the part of government. So it becomes a difficult. Of course, you are given a concrete solutions, but it is very expensive. So to minimize the expenditure, whatever recommendation that you are given, how far we can remodify it, how you have to give the to avoid the maximum expenditure, to minimize the expenditure, how you can how the findings or the suggestions can be implemented, that also can be given in the managerial implication. On the basis of that, the decisions can be taken. That is why. So how far targeted people get benefit out of output as results? Targeted people is important because they are facing the problem. So how far they are going to get benefit? That is most important, because we have spent a lot of money and we come out with some output, and that output we are going to implement on the beneficiaries part. So they have to get benefit. They have to come out of the problem. So that is our intention. With that intention, we have conducted investigation. So ultimately, the purpose has to be served. So that has to be taken into mind. That has to be already came out with your findings and investigation. That has to be incorporated right clearly, so that there will be no ambiguity at the time of implementation and all that. So language expressions already talked about to write implications or results of the study indicate that language when you are writing the implications, skip it. Now, limitations of the study forward. The limitations are the weakness of your study. Small sample size, inappropriate research instruments, time factor. These are all the limitations of conducting of study that you have to mention in your writing. No study covers all aspects. That's what I told. Any study, any researcher, any investigator cannot cover all the components associated with the problem. It is because of the time constraints and the limitations, other limited resources and all that, limited resources and all that. Others should discuss the limitations or gaps also. Next, present future scope of the plan of the study. These all should be presented in the limitations. These are all the things that are to be incorporated, that are to be written in the limitations part. Acknowledge the issues of scientific, in a scientific view. This has to be taken care. Next, you are talking about the limitations and scope for future research. Continued. In continuation to that, the statements under the limitations written. One of the limitations of the, like that, you have to start the start the paragraph. One of the limitations of the research, or otherwise the present study has only examined that. Like that, you can start. Findings of the research cannot be generalized all over the all other population. Like that, you can. The present study was limited by, like that. Like this, you have to start the limitations and scope of future. These things should be incorporated. With these phrases, you can how to start the limitations part. Next, you have points to be considered for future research. This is last and final in the report writing or writing of research components. The future research is very important. This under this, the scope of the study, which was not covered, should be emphasized. Significant can be suggested. Significant can be, and significance can be suggested for further research. So, what are the what is not covered? What is yet to be covered? What is not covered in your study? What is yet to be covered from after your study? What are the points that you have? What are the areas that you have left over in your study that you have to highlight for future research, so that the future researchers, investigators will take it into consideration and they will conduct the investigations on those areas. Next, you have statement and specific recommendations to be made. What needs to happen next? That is one thing. Justify the future scope. So why the future research has to be conducted? What is the necessity? What is the significance of the conduct of future research on those areas? That also you have to mention, you have to write in 1 or 2 lines. What can be achieved from it? If you conduct whatever the leftover areas in your investigation, if any other researcher conduct on those areas, what will be the benefit? What they can achieve? In what way those things will be, investigation results will be benefited to others? So those things also can be incorporated in your report. The limitations of the present study to be identified so as to way forward to the future research. So limitations of the present study, you have to anyhow you are talking about. So these in keeping in view these limitations and the future components, what they are going to other research, what they are going to take up the investigation, if you can reveal, so that in your future research, then what happens, the future research can be conducted effectively and more solutions will come out. Whatever areas that you are left over, on those areas, more suggestions, more recommendations, more the solutions you can give through the research, future research by the other researchers. When they conduct, they can give more recommendations, more suggestions, more solutions can be given from those components, from those investigations. Next, you have points to be considered future research. These are all the points. Just we are coming to the end. What should be explored by others? That has to be covered in the future research. What study is needed next? That should be covered in the future research. What method should be employed? What methods are to be employed to get accuracy of the study of the study? That also should be mentioned in the future research. And what is needed to do this study? Need of the study. Why we have to conduct these areas also should be mentioned. What is worth exploring? What should be explored by taking the leftover items, areas of your research, by the if the future researcher are taking into consideration the leftover areas of your research, your investigation, if he takes, then what it is, it's a worth investigating. So in what way it is worth investigation, that also should be mentioned, because these are all, if you mention what happens, it will be effective and the people will be motivated and they will come out with their investigations and all that. That is very important. Will the suggested study be relevant 5 to 10 years down the line? So that is very important. You have investigated, given so many recommendations and all that on the basis of findings and results, but ultimately these findings and recommendations, to what extent, to how many days it will be useful for the implementation, or how many days it can be it will be on for coming out of the present or existing problem. So that is very, that also you have to mention in that. So these are all the points that we have covered under this. Thank you very much, and I'm sorry taking a lot of your time. I may be crossed the time also, I'm sorry, but very lengthy things, because all these points are very important. Unless we cover these points, I think we cannot give a broader perspective on these 4 or 5 areas. So I thank once again one and all the organizers and patient listening by the participants. I thank one and all. Thank you all. If any questions are there, you are most welcome. You can pose it, and to the best of my knowledge, I can answer. Or if anybody wants to submit or add something to my lecture, you can also add it, because you're all researchers and PhD and associate professors are there in the participants. It is my pleasure to take input from you also. If you want to submit anything, add something, it's a value addition, I feel. You are most welcome. Thank you very much. Thanks a lot, one and all.
Thank you, sir. The forum is open for discussion.
Yeah.
If anybody want to ask any question.
Any questions, or you can add something. If you want to add something, you can add. Or if you want to ask any questions, you are welcome. Please.
Any participants do have any questions?
Any questions or any additions, you are most welcome, please.
Sir,
Madam, please
I
tell.
am Manisha Vijayavargyan.
Yeah.
And it was to listen to you. And I have a query that these many days, the professors use some websites or softwares for editing the manuscript. So do you have any idea about? And if you can please share if you know this.
There are some websites are there, but my suggestion is a better editing process can be done by the researcher on his own. It is better by taking the help of the websites and all that. I think personally, my feeling is better we have to edit our own, so that because we are the investigator, we know what are the lapses in that, what are the lacunae in that in our investigation, we know. And if any sometimes unknowingly we may exaggerations and some new ideas there is unknowingly we may be incorporated. So all those things, when you review it, the draft is redrafted, then it will come to our notice. So it is better, instead of taking the help of the websites and all that for reviewing purpose, or as you said, it is better to review ourselves, so that we will have some more full idea in our mind, because we are the investigators. It is better. And some websites are there. I will give you after the session. I will give you, madam. Please. Thank you. Thank you for your excellent question.
Thank you.
Any more questions? Yes, dear participants, anyone has any more questions to ask?
Any questions, any additions? Most welcome, please.
Well, one more thing.
Yeah, please,
Like
please.
I listen, many a times I get confused between a conclusion and result. In conclusion, that many times we simply write down that this was the purpose and I found this,
Yeah.
which I have mentioned in finding also, and that same thing you repeated, and till now I get confused while writing a conclusion. What different should I write down? This thing, because really it's true that the things get repeated, so please, if you can please focus once again on that.
No, no, what I understood from you is that when you are starting to write the conclusion part, you are not supposed to start with the conclusion because you have already mentioned the heading as a conclusion. And in the conclusion part, what are the components that you are going to incorporate also I explained in the slides. I will share my slides to you and to the organizers. There is no problem at all. I will share all my slides to you, and whatever components that you are supposed to taken care to include while you are writing the conclusion part, those items, those components, you please take into consideration and practice them when you are writing the conclusion part. And whatever do's and don'ts I mentioned in the slide, that perfectly all of you, I think you might be knowing all those things. There is no need to tell you because you're all well experienced people. You're also well experienced people, and those things better if you avoid. And it is better so that the conclusion part implications, what are the components that are to be included in the conclusion part, I explained in the slides also, it is there. So those things you please be ensure in the conclusion part. And every time when you are writing the conclusion, you have to check it, recheck it, whether according to the guidelines when you have prepared, whether you have prepared the conclusion or not. That you please check it. If it is not there or any deviations are there, any repetitions are there, that can be identified only through reviewing it. Reviewing it only, it can be identified. So when you review it, review is compulsory. When you review it, it will be identified. That is why one draft will not be sufficient. Many number of redrafts are important, so that through redrafts we'll identify some of the, as you said, all those the lacunae that can be identified and can be easily removed with the help of do's and don'ts, and other points which are mentioned in the conclusion slides. That also will be very much useful. If you can keep in mind, conclusion part will become very effective and it will be very beautiful, and the readers will be always remember the areas that you have focused, and it will be very effective. Many number of readers you can get for as a readers for your work. That is what I can tell you, madam. Thank you very much. Excellent question that you have asked.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. So I suppose we do not have further doubts. Okay. So, sir, thank you so much for this enriched session.
Doubts, yes, madam. Doubts will come when it is a statistical analysis or findings analysis or data presentation. If I speak about those things, then the doubts will come. But these are all things that I was asked to speak is theoretical background. Naturally, researchers may not get more doubts and all that. But I don't mind to give you the slides, and I will give you the slides and presentation to all the participants. Can go through it again and again, and you can maintain, you can follow or practice. If you feel that is required, you can practice these guidelines, and it will be effective. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. So thank you so much, sir, for the enriched session. It was a great learning experience for all of us. May I now request Dr. Vibhuti, Head MBA, to kindly present the vote of thanks.
Thank you, Nishi. It was a great learning from Dr. Kankipati Srinivasa Rao. So thank you very much, sir, for accepting our invitation. And I suppose this online mode is beneficiary for us in this sense only, that we can have the expertise of the great researchers from any part of the world or any part of the nation. So Dr. Ashish, she told me that we are having one of the resource person from other part of the nation. I was so happy to have you here. And the way you presented, that was also very nice, because this faculty development program, we have planned it just keeping in mind that there should be development, there should be enhancement. We don't wish to have this faculty development program only just for the sake of the
Yes.
FDP.
Mhm.
We wish that our participants should get something, and they should inculcate the expertise of Rao sir in their research paper and thing. Sir, we will again have you as our resource person in some of the other webinar or
Thanks
FDP.
a lot.
Thank
Thanks a
you.
lot.
Thank you
Thanks
very
a lot.
much, Rao sir. Thank you, Nishi. This is all from my side.
Thank you, ma'am. So with this, we are over with today's session, and I hope everyone has a lot of takeaway from this session. I'll just brief you all about day 5, that means tomorrow's session. Tomorrow's session, the topics that will be covered are measures of association and correlation, introduction to regression and multiple regression, on MS Excel and SPSS, and how to avoid and reduce plagiarism. This session would be taken by our another eminent resource person, Dr. Megha Agarwal. So that's all about tomorrow's session. Now, before we end, I request everyone to kindly fill up the feedback form that will be circulated. I request Ms. Yatika Rastogi to kindly share the link for the feedback.
Madam, one request.
Yes, sir.
Kindly share the today's video link to me to my WhatsApp number, please.
Sure, sir.
Okay,
we'll
please.
do that.
Some photos also you please send it.
Yes, sir.
Thank you very much.
Surely we'll do it. Thank you, sir.
Thanks a lot. Thanks
Thank
all
you,
the
everyone.
organizers.
Yes, sir. Thank you everyone for joining in today's session. Before leaving the platform, kindly fill up the feedback form. Thank you everyone. Have a nice day.